Well, you can't see it in this video, but I did try to dye my hair back to the original color, which resembles my eyebrows. And it didn't turn out that way. It turned out red. So now it's kind of like strawberry blondish as it's fading. But, I look at it this way. Sometimes in life you can make choices. You can pick things out. But sometimes those choices are made for you for a reason. And so when it turned out red, I realized that maybe my ancestors are telling me to represent those missing and murdered indigenous people. I have a hard time saying that word. Because, I'm like old school. The Sioux are the Sioux. The Huron are the Huron. We're not grouped into these buckets, okay? That's just the way I look at it. The Seneca are the Seneca. The Onondaga, they are the Onondaga. That's just the way I look at it. So, anyways, we're into June, and although I do not historically mark this day, I saw it come up. June 2nd, the anniversary of American Indian citizenship. And so I wanted to chime in on that a little bit, because people actually think that was when, in 1924, that American Indians were given citizenship with the right to vote. Okay? That's not what that whole shit was about. So you actually have to go back in time. Before the Americans Indian Citizenship Act, there was the Snyder Act, and before that there was the Dawes Act, and before that, we're going back into the 1800s, and there were treaties, and then even before the treaties came about, there were, like people, kings of land, who stepped forward and said, the things that transpired, it's not right. Like King George from England, he, through proclamation, actually placed it in his will that this land, we're talking the United States and Canada, shall always be the land of the Iroquois. And there's a reason behind all that stuff, because when they killed the Huron in large numbers, large quantities, and there was only approximately 10,000 remaining feet on this land, they had to create some way to preserve that blood, okay? Because they made a grave mistake when they did that. When they killed all those people, it was a major grave mistake. So in order to attempt to protect them, King George put in his will by proclamation that this land would always belong to the Iroquois. And so, as time passes and people discover things, discovery has its good and bad points. Discovery somehow, makes the discoverer wealthy. And in all reality, what you discover should be returned to the people that it belongs to. You know, like if you discovered something about my ancestors, you should try to return that stuff to me. You know, that's the old school thought of things. Not, I'm going to make $1 million off what I just discovered, and it's not even my fucking land. So, anyways, going back to the citizenship. So, with the 10,000 remaining feet of the Huron, and as you can imagine, it fucked with their heads. That one day their land is populated, heavily populated by their people, and they had their own system of management of their people, and then they're gone. They're like wiped off the fucking face of the earth. That would fuck with anybody's head. You're like basically standing on this planet totally diluted in blood. Okay? Your blood is down. So they picked up work to occupy their minds and to get themselves off what had transpired. And they picked up work kind of like on the international lines. In it, the way they looked at it, it would, by working for people outside, off their land, it would educate them on things, but they'd be able to use their skills, which their skills were, you know, they could find and locate anything running code. And if people were willing to pay them to do that, they would also be able to learn about banking, the monetary system, how money is used, and blah, 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 blah. So that's what they did. They basically went and captured high profile people wanted for crimes. And they got paid a lot of money. A lot of money. Okay. So they had bank accounts in a lot of different countries, and they would shave off portions of the money that they had, and they would send it to the United States. And it was supposed to be used, go into this one fund and used for the health and well-being of the remaining blood. But what happened was somebody, you know, first of all, you know, it's almost like the same shit that goes on. You get the United States has an agreement with a country, but a local government doesn't. Well, we don't know anything about that agreement. It's the same thing, okay? So this money's building up in this bank account, and nobody's touched it for years, and it's like a huge balloon of fucking money, okay? And they're like, you know, it's held in trust, basically. And back then, they were trying to preserve the land under the Indian names, and that you were using the federal government to do that. Somebody decided, well, you know, we got to do something with this money, and they didn't know that it was supposed to be used for the health and the well-being of the blood that was remaining here. It was supposed to be divvied out into each one of those communities and make sure that they were taken care of, okay? It's like blood taking care of blood, okay? And it didn't happen that way. So in order to tap the bank account, let's say, they came up with all these reasons. Oh, well, you know, we'd give it to them, but they probably don't understand how to use it. You know, they've never had to use money before. They don't understand the monetary system. So they created all these Indian schools to educate them. And then they started pulling them into Indian schools, and one by one, you know, they're like killing little kids and shit like that. And then, you know, they're basically abusing the fuck out of them instead of educating them. And we already know that history, okay? And then they discover along the way that, oh shit, We had all these treaties with these people, and we were supposed to be paying them annuities that never expire. So, for the use of the land, they were supposed to be paying annuities to them. And the agreement through the treaties is that it would never expire, meaning the payments should be going ongoing, okay? So they instead come up with this whole concept of education. They hire all these white women to come here, the 1,000 white women. That's orchestrated through the church to bring them in as school teachers, to teach the Indian children, supposedly so that they can have the money that sits in all these trust accounts and use it effectively and blah, blah, blah. They'll know how to use it. Well, these women started getting pregnant. And then the concern was, where do their children fit in? Because they're like half breeds. And so that's where that citizenship, all that shit came into play. They wanted, you gotta look at it. It's the ones that are born in America. Okay, it gives them citizen rights. You gotta look at it. Because before 1924, there was no census on American Indians, nor were there any census on the Negro population. They called all black people Negroes then. They were actually all under slave books. So they had no clue what the actual population was back in them days. So it took on the flavor of one, giving them, some type of anchor on the population till they could figure it out. Number two, gave the half breeds citizenship and some rights and the right to inherit. And it still goes back to the Indian schools. Money, if you look at it, it's all about schools. All about schools. It just talks about schools. Before they came along, it's like the way people were educated off the land first and foremost was a way better system than creating all these schools. So, yep, slaves. Just like we're all fucking slaves today, tax fucking slaves. Nothing's changed. They just found some way to categorize us just a little bit differently. Because we're all fucking slaves at this point. But that's what it was. They needed to try to figure out what the actual population was. It has nothing to do with fucking voting or voting rights. And they needed to make sure that the half-breeds were first considered citizens before the ones that were not even on any type of census for citizenship and didn't even have rights. We have not come a long way, baby, in 100 years.